It happened in the kitchen. The sun had just started bleeding out behind the hills outside Sacramento, staining the windows with orange that should have felt warm, but didn't. The house smelled like something burnt. Not the food, but the air itself, like the drywall remembered every fight that had ever echoed off it. The countertop between us was still littered with the remnants of dinner, a casserole half-eaten, utensils abandoned. No one had said thank you. No one ever did anymore. I told Megan to put her phone away. Just that. She'd been glued to it since she came down, laughing at something on TikTok, ignoring every attempt I made at conversation. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I said, "Hey, can we put the phones away during dinner?" Her head snapped up like I'd slapped her. And then she screamed, "Don't teach us." Her chair scraped back hard, the legs shrieking against the tile. She stepped toward me like she wanted to fight, and before I could even move, she shoved me, 2 hands to the chest. Full force. My shoulder hit the pantry door with a dull thud that would bruise later. Linda was there instantly. Not to check on me, but to wrap an arm around Megan's back, to shield her. To tell me, "You were provoking it. You always cross boundaries." My mouth opened. Nothing came out. That was it. That was the moment everything sharpened. The moment the blinders fell. That one sentence rewrote every memory. Every moment I had swallowed disrespect in the name of peace. I saw it all in reverse, like someone hit rewind on a life I had lied to myself about. The vacations planned without me. The therapy sessions I paid for but wasn't invited to attend. The whispered conversations between mother and daughter that would stop the second I entered the room. The way Linda would say, "We decided," when I hadn't even known a decision was on the table. I had been tolerated. Not loved. Not even liked. Tolerated like an odor, like static in the background. Necessary, maybe. Useful sometimes. But never wanted. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stared at them. Megan with her heaving chest, cheeks flushed with the righteousness only teenagers can summon, and Linda with her hand still on her daughter's shoulder, like I was the threat. I had taken this girl to her first college tour. Stood in line for 2 hours so she could meet the admissions advisor she admired. I had stayed up late helping her write an essay about resilience, hers supposedly never pointing out that she plagiarized half of it from a Reddit thread. I had bought the car she drove to school, co-signed the insurance, paid for her therapy when she broke down sophomore year after a boy cheated on her. I even fixed that boy's car when he came by, no thanks, just the sound of his tires squealing as he left. And now I was being told I had crossed a boundary. I went upstairs that night after the dishes were still dirty and no one offered help. Sat in my office, closed the door, didn't turn on the light. The house creaked. I heard them laughing downstairs later, Megan and Linda, like nothing had happened. Like I was a sitcom dad whose pain resets after every episode. Something to laugh around. That laugh echoed. Long after they went to bed, I sat in the dark and let it play again and again. That sound was truth. That sound said, "You're not in this family." I thought about how many things I'd convinced myself were normal. The way Megan would ignore my questions at the table, but answer Linda's. The way she once posted a photo of her biological father, a man who hadn't shown up since she was 10, with the caption, "The real one always shows up when it counts." Showed up for what? A weekend visit and a Starbucks run? I remembered when I suggested a curfew years ago. Megan had been sneaking out, coming home with excuses that didn't line up. I wasn't harsh. I just said, "Midnight. That's reasonable." Linda pulled me aside, said I was being controlling, said Megan was going through a phase, that I needed to learn to pick my battles. That was the phrase Linda always used when I tried to draw lines. Pick your battles. And so, like a fool, I stopped picking any. I let Megan roll her eyes when I spoke. I let her slam her door when I asked how school was going. I let her call me Michael instead of Dad, even after 6 years of raising her, because Linda said forcing the title would only push her away. I spent 2 years trying not to push a girl who never wanted me near her in the first place. And through it all, I paid. I paid for her laptop, her iPhone, her school trips. I bought a dress she never wore because her real dad sent one with a note and a gift card, and that made her cry. Not because of love, but because even his tiny effort felt like a grand gesture compared to my quiet presence. I was there every day, and that, it turns out, meant nothing. Linda told her sister once, I overheard it on the phone, that Megan was just testing limits, like all teens do, but I wasn't allowed to have limits. I wasn't allowed to say no. Every time I did, it became a debate, a negotiation where I had no leverage. That night, sitting in the dark, I replayed Megan's shove. The way her hands hit my chest. The way she meant it. And I realized something that made my stomach turn. She hadn't expected consequences. Not even for a second. She'd known her mother would shield her. And she had been right. There was no hesitation in her. Just rage. And beneath that rage, entitlement. Like I owed her my silence, my surrender, my obedience. That was when the memory hit me. A quiet one. Years ago, Megan was maybe 12. Her mother and I had just gotten married. We were at a grocery store. Megan asked if she could get a bag of cookies. I said no, we already had snacks at home. She turned to Linda and said, clear as day, can you tell him I'm allowed? I laughed then. Thought it was harmless. Linda laughed too. But it wasn't harmless. It was the first crack. Megan learned in that moment that my no could be overruled. That I didn't have the final say. That I could be bypassed. And Linda let her learn that. Over and over again. Every time she stepped in to soften my words, or translate my tone, or explain my intentions as if I couldn't speak for myself. She made me smaller in my own house. I became the man who paid the bills, grilled on weekends, stayed quiet when it mattered. Not a father, not a partner, an appliance, a wall. That shove in the kitchen wasn't spontaneous. It was earned, not by Megan, but by years of Linda's silent permission. That shove was a verdict. Final one. I wasn't one of them. I was a man who lived with them, funded them, tolerated them, but I was not part of the family. I thought love was enough. That if I stayed, if I worked hard, if I kept giving, they'd see me, respect me, accept me. But all I taught them was that I'd never leave. And people don't respect what they think will never leave. I stared at the photos on the wall that night. Family vacations. Smiling faces. Me in the middle, arms around shoulders that had long grown cold. I saw now what I hadn't then. I was the one being propped up for the camera. A figurehead. A background character with a credit score and a toolbox. And Megan's shove? It wasn't the beginning. It was the last act. The final scene of a play I hadn't realized I was in. And Linda's words, "You were provoking it," were the curtain call. That night, for the first time, I saw my place clearly. And it was nowhere. The next morning, Megan acted like nothing had happened. She was at the breakfast bar, hunched over her phone, cereal bowl forgotten, bare feet tapping against the stool like a metronome of contempt. She didn't look up when I entered, didn't flinch, no apology, no trace of the shove, of the shouting, just a casual, calculated indifference. Linda walked in moments later. She kissed Megan's head, murmured something soft, a mother's language reserved for the child she would always side with. Then she looked at me, and when she spoke, it was in that strained, performative calm people use when they've already chosen their side but don't want the fallout. "Let's not escalate things today," she said, like I was a grenade she had to disarm. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say, nothing to salvage. I sat at the table, poured coffee with a hand that didn't shake, and listened to them talk around me. Not to me, never to me. Megan wanted money for a concert, something local, something forgettable. Linda told her she'd ask me later. She didn't ask me then. Not with me in the room. Because in her eyes, I wasn't in the room. That was when the clarity came. Sharp, clean, like the first breath after surfacing from deep water. A voice in my head, still and steady, said, "You are not part of this." I looked around the kitchen, the tile I installed, the light fixture I replaced, the new fridge I bought after the old one died 2 weeks ago. I remembered the invoices, the bills, the account passwords saved to my phone. All of it mine. Every piece of comfort, every convenience, delivered by my hands. And I was the outsider. I had given them a life they now lived around me. And so I made a decision, not out of rage, not from wounded pride, but from that terrible, clear understanding. I was funding my own erasure. I stood up, walked down the hall, picked up my jacket from the hook, my keys from the dish. Quiet movements, no dramatics, no slam of the door, no confrontation, just silence. I passed Linda in the hallway on the way out. She gave me a look, confused but not afraid. She thought I was running an errand, getting milk, picking up a package, something small, something forgettable. She didn't know I wouldn't be coming back. She didn't ask where I was going. That was telling, wasn't it? I drove without music. No radio, just the hum of tires and the steady rise of peace in my chest. A peace that felt like grief's twin. The clarity stayed with me. I wasn't a father. Not in this house. Not to Megan. Not in Linda's eyes. I was a wallet, a repairman, a seat filler at events that needed photos. Something to pose beside, but never with. I pulled into a parking lot. Sat there for 20 minutes. Just breathing. Just thinking, and then I pulled out my phone. One app at a time I started shutting things off. No announcement, no emails, no drama, just numbers, connections, quiet exits from systems I had built. The tuition payments? Cancelled. I had paid 2 semesters already, out of pocket, without so much as a thank you text. Megan had asked for them through Linda, always through Linda, as if I were a grant committee, not a person. The shared card Megan used for gas, for groceries, for those spontaneous emergencies, that somehow always included makeup and concert merch. I froze it. Netflix, Spotify, Amazon Prime, the invisible comforts she took for granted, all paused indefinitely. I didn't feel triumph. I felt nothing. A dull silence in my chest where warmth used to be. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. I opened our joint insurance account, the one covering Megan's car. The one I had added her to without a second thought. I removed her. Let Linda figure out the replacement policy. I opened our shared savings. Split it. Moved my half to an account in my name only. Not out of spite. Out of prudence. I knew what was coming. I knew how fast love could turn into litigation when the money stopped flowing. I wasn't rushing. I was preparing. By the time I returned home that night, the house was asleep. I walked in quiet, like a ghost retracing his steps. The hallway lights were off. The air was still. My office light was on. Linda had left it that way. Maybe she hoped I'd bury myself in work, as always. Maybe she thought I'd retreat, lick my wounds, apologize by morning. But there was nothing left to apologize for. I stood in that room, staring at the desk where I had managed every financial burden this family ever faced. Megan's textbooks, Linda's hospital bill from last winter, the loan I took out to remodel the guest bathroom when her parents were coming to visit. All of it passed through this desk, through me, and none of it had earned me even the basic dignity of respect. I looked at the family calendar pinned above the desk, birthdays, school events, payment due dates, and I saw it for what it really was. A ledger, not of love, but of obligations. Everything marked in my handwriting. Every dollar measured in silence. I took the calendar down, folded it, put it in the trash. I didn't sleep in our bed that night. I slept on the couch. Not out of anger, but out of honesty. That bed wasn't mine anymore. It was a set piece. A place to lie beside someone who had long since stopped seeing me as an equal. The next morning, Linda woke before me. She saw me on the couch, paused, said nothing, just like the night before, just like always. She made coffee, 2 cups, didn't offer me one, and I knew. She felt it too. The shift, the loss. She didn't ask where I'd gone. She didn't mention the shove, or the words she had thrown like stones the day before. You were provoking it, still echoing in my ears. Instead, she sat beside Megan. Their eyes met across the kitchen island. Megan was already asking about her allowance. Linda promised to check in with me. I didn't answer. I got up, went back to the office, closed the door. The calls started 2 hours later. One from the university billing office. One from Megan herself. And then Linda. "Michael, something's wrong with the tuition payment," she said, her voice all urgency and faux confusion. "They're saying it bounced." I didn't pretend. "There's no mistake," I said. Silence. Then, "What do you mean?" I looked at the closed door between us. At the wood that now felt more honest than any face I'd looked into for years. "I mean, I'm done paying for someone who doesn't see me as family." She didn't respond. I think she knew then. She tried to speak. Maybe to justify. Maybe to beg. But the silence between us was louder. That was when it truly ended. Not with a fight. Not with a scream. But with a pause. A breath. An absence. That silence became my answer. And I never had to raise my voice to be heard again. By noon, the house was pulsing with tension. Megan came down the stairs in her usual parade of indifference. Earbuds in, socked feet dragging across the hardwood. She opened the fridge, muttered something about almond milk, and then checked her phone. Like always. But this time her fingers froze. She tapped the screen twice, then again harder like brute force might correct the numbers. Her mouth tightened. Her thumb slid across a banking app. And then she turned toward the living room, where I sat, calm, unmoving. The cards not working. Her voice wasn't angry yet, just puzzled, as if the universe had momentarily glitched. I didn't look up from the newspaper. She repeated it, louder. "My card isn't working." This time I met her eyes, held them. "I know," I said. She blinked, confused. A beat passed before she realized what I meant. Then the confusion morphed into disbelief. "You canceled it?" I froze it. "Why?" My voice was steady. "Because you told me I'm not your father. And you were right." The silence hit like a slap. Her face hardened. "Are you serious?" I folded the paper, set it aside. "Yes." She didn't yell. Not yet. The rage hadn't reached the surface. She turned away and stormed back upstairs. The stomp of her feet a deliberate show, a teenager's drumbeat of defiance. 15 minutes later, Linda came into the room, phone in hand, brows furrowed like the situation was just some minor hiccup she'd smooth over with her usual performance of calm rationality. "Megan said you shut off her account." I nodded. "Correct." She waited, expecting more. Some explanation. Some guilt. I gave her none. "She needs it for gas, groceries, school supplies. Those are things a parent would cover," I said. The implication hung heavy between us. She bit her lip. "Michael, come on. This isn't the way to handle it." I tilted my head. "What is the way, then?" "I'm listening." She hesitated just for a second, and that second told me everything. She didn't have an answer. Just habits. Just routines where I paid. She defused. Megan insulted. And the cycle spun again. "She's young," Linda finally said. "She doesn't understand what she said." I raised an eyebrow. "She understood it enough to shove me, to scream in my face. And you understood it enough to take her side." Linda flinched. Not a lot. Just a flicker in the eyes. But I saw it. "It's not about sides." "Everything is about sides," I said. "You've made that clear." She didn't speak after that. She just left. The quiet was thicker than any argument. That afternoon, the university called. I let it go to voicemail. Then the landlord called, the one for Megan's off-campus apartment. Left a message asking about the late rent, the bounced auto payment, the overdue balance. I deleted it without listening to the end. By evening, Megan was in full meltdown mode. She stood in the doorway of my office. Fists clenched, voice shaking from the force of anger she didn't know how to carry. "This is illegal," she screamed. "You can't just pull everything out from under me." I looked up from my desk. Calm. Still. "I didn't pull anything. I stopped giving. There's a difference." "You can't do this to me," she yelled. "I already have." Her mouth opened, probably for another accusation, but she stopped herself. Swallowed it. She realized I wasn't bluffing. that the comfort had ended, not in fire, but in ice. She tried a different tone. What about school? What about rent? My groceries? My books? I shrugged. Ask your real father. And there it was, the crack. The one thing she hadn't expected me to say. The name neither of us had spoken in months. The man who'd shown up twice in a year and still got framed photos on her desk. The man who missed birthdays, skipped bills, forgot what brand of cereal she liked, but was still called Dad. She stared at me. He won't answer. Then you should have thought of that before you decided I wasn't your family. She left without another word. Linda came in an hour later. She stood in the same doorway, but softer. Tears in her eyes, a tension in her shoulders like she was balancing grief and pride and didn't know which one to drop. She's just a kid, she whispered. No, she's an adult when she wants autonomy, a child when she wants money. You can't have it both ways. She's scared, Linda said. I nodded. Good. That means she finally understands something. Linda sat down across from me. Her voice shook, not with fear, but with something like disbelief. You really meant it. I always did. She'll fail without help. Maybe, maybe not, but at least she'll learn who she can count on. Linda stared at the floor. She's been messaging her dad, she said quietly. He's not answering. I said nothing. She told him she needed help. He left her on read. Still, I said nothing. She's crying. I met her eyes. So am I, just not out loud. Linda stood, wiped her face, left me alone again. By nightfall, Megan tried a new tactic, control the narrative. A flood of messages hit my phone. **TS of texts she'd sent to friends, framing me as vindictive, unstable, withholding money to punish her. She was building her case. Not for court, for pity, sympathy, for anyone to tell her she was right. She posted a vague story on Instagram. Something about betrayal. About losing support for speaking the truth. The comments came fast. Friends, cousins, strangers. I'm so sorry, Meg. You don't deserve this. Cut toxic people out, even if they're family. I scrolled through them in silence. My name wasn't mentioned, but I was there, in every line. The villain in her script. Linda saw it too. She didn't say a word. The next morning, Megan's phone was filled with bounced payments. Subscription renewals failed. Streaming services locked her out. Her Uber account declined her trip to campus. She asked Linda for her credit card. Linda gave it. And I watched her step in, patch the hole I had left, use her own money to hold up a daughter who wouldn't lift a finger to apologize. That was when I knew Linda wasn't just complicit. She was addicted to the role. The fixer, the apologist, the woman who kept her child safe, even if it meant burning me down to do it. I let them both play out the performance. But I stopped paying for the stage. A week passed. No more screams. No more slammed doors. Just a heavy, stagnant quiet that wrapped itself around the house like dust over forgotten furniture. Megan barely came downstairs. When she did, it was always with her phone in hand, her eyes glued to the screen, as if she could scroll her way out of consequence. I watched her movements, slower now, heavier. She had grown used to floating. Now she was learning how it felt to sink. The missed payments piled up. University housing had sent another notice. Final warning. Her rent was 2 weeks overdue. Her tuition account was locked. No new classes. No registration for next semester. A quiet academic death sentence, delivered by automated emails and cold institutional phrasing. Linda tried to handle it herself. I saw her whispering in corners of the house, making calls from behind closed doors. She was selling jewelry, old family pieces, a bracelet she once told me her mother gave her. I said nothing. I let her shoulder it, let her feel it in her own way. Once I would have stepped in, picked up the bill, made it all disappear with a few clicks. But I had done enough disappearing. One morning, Megan came into the kitchen. No makeup, no headphones. She stood still, pale and quiet, the way a child does before asking a question they know won't be received well. Her voice was barely there. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. I poured coffee, took a sip, then I nodded toward the table. She sat, folded her hands, picked at a chipped fingernail. "I'm sorry." 2 words. Small, fragile. But I didn't move. I didn't mean to. I was just... She struggled, looked for footing, found none. I was angry. That day. The kitchen. I shouldn't have said what I said. Or pushed you. I don't know. Everything's been hard. Still, I said nothing. She leaned forward. "You were there. I know that. I know you paid for stuff. Helped. I know." I waited. I thought you'd always be there. Like you didn't need anything back. There it was. The confession. The admission that she had built her world on the belief that I was endless. Bottomless. Tireless. "Why now?" I asked. She blinked. "What? Why the apology now?" Her eyes shifted. "Because I was wrong." "No," I said. "That's not the reason. Try again." She hesitated, then lowered her gaze. "Because everything's falling apart." Honesty at last. I leaned forward, folded my hands, and spoke softly. "Megan, if I had died last month, you'd have made a post. Called me your dad. Shared a photo. Written something like, 'He was always there.' But the truth is, you never really saw me. Not when it counted. Not when it was inconvenient. Not when it cost you anything." She looked away. "And now that I've stopped funding your silence, you've decided I'm worth talking to again." Tears welled in her eyes. But I didn't soften. "Not this time. I'm not here to be your backup plan. I'm not here to catch you when the man who gave you your last name vanishes. I'm not a bridge between your tantrums and your comfort." She opened her mouth. I raised a hand. "I'm not angry. I'm just done." Linda came in then. Stood at the edge of the room like a ghost returning to a house it no longer recognized. "Megan," she said gently, "go upstairs." "But..." "Now." Megan left. Her footsteps didn't stomp this time. They just drifted. Linda sat in the chair Megan had left warm. She didn't cry. Not this time. Maybe her tears were finally as tired as mine. "She's trying," she said. I nodded. "So am I. You could help her." I looked at her. Hard. "Do you want me to?" I asked. She didn't answer. "Do you want me to pay the tuition? Fix it? Make it all go away again?" Still no answer. "I think," I said slowly, "you want me to help so she won't have to face the weight of her words, so she can believe there are no consequences, that the world will bend for her because it always has." "She's 20, Linda whispered, "and I've been carrying her since she was 13. We sat in silence. "I thought we were a team," I said finally. "That's what marriage is. A team. Partnership. But every time things got hard, you stepped to her side and left me alone." Linda's eyes were wet again. She didn't wipe them. "She's my daughter. And I'm your husband." A pause. Then, "was." The words settled between us like dust. "I haven't been your husband in a long time," I said. "I've been your financier, your fixer, your shield." Linda closed her eyes, let the tears fall. "You could have stood up," I said. "Even once. Just once. When she said I wasn't her real father, you could have corrected her. But you didn't. And that silence told her she was right. I was trying to keep the peace. You kept the illusion." The clock ticked behind us. Somewhere upstairs, Megan's door creaked open, then closed again. "I'm moving out," I said. Linda flinched. "I found a place, month to month, furnished. Nothing special. But it's quiet, and no one there looks at me like I'm an obstacle. Michael, I'll keep paying for your car, for a few more months. I won't leave you stranded. But everything else stops. Utilities, streaming, phone plans, all of it. It ends next billing cycle." "And Megan?" I shook my head. "She has a father." Linda's face crumbled, but she nodded. There were no protests this time, no begging, just a slow, reluctant acceptance, because she finally understood. I packed over the next 2 days. Quietly. No drama. No goodbyes. I left the wedding photo in the drawer of my nightstand. It had already stopped meaning anything. Megan didn't say a word when I carried my last box to the car. Linda watched from the porch. Said nothing. I drove away without looking back. The first night in the new place was still. A different kind of still. Not the silence of suppression. The silence of peace. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I had already spent years grieving a family that had never truly included me. And now I was free. Not from obligation, but from the lie. A month passed. Then 2. Megan never called. Linda sent one message, "We're figuring things out." I didn't reply. I heard through a mutual friend that Megan dropped out. That she was living with a cousin. That her father hadn't returned a single call. That Linda was covering what she could. But the money was tight. They'll survive. Or they won't. But it won't be on my back anymore. I walk now without the weight of false titles. Without the exhaustion of being dad in every way except the one that mattered, the one that came with respect. I have peace. And I earned it. Not through victory, but through withdrawal. I didn't burn the house down. I just stopped keeping the lights on. And in the dark, they finally saw what I had been. A foundation. Now gone. So I ask you, all of you, was I wrong? Was I cruel for stepping away from a table where I was only ever served silence? Or was I right to let them eat the meals I once paid for, in the cold, in the dark, without me? You tell me, what would you have done?